Welcome to this edition of the Hoosier Basketball Experience. I'm your host, Phil Eisenbarger. One can learn a lot about the Hoosier Basketball Experience when it comes from someone who grew up in Illinois but came to Indiana to play college hoops, coached college basketball in Indiana, and recruited Indiana high school kids for 3 decades. Add to this experience the fact that he played on 4 Big Ten championship teams and the 1976 undefeated team at IU. Recruited by Coach K, then a Knight assistant, he didn't get enough of Coach Knight in those 4 playing years, so he went on as an assistant for IU the next 8. He was my coach from 1977 to 1981, and I'm quite sure that's when he questioned his career path. But IU, Evansville, West Point, and St. Louis all are grateful he kept up with it. When you start a coaching career with Coach Knight and end it with Rick Majerus, there must be enough material there for several books. As Evansville head coach for 17 years, his teams won conference championships and NCAA appearances. In his brief time at St. Louis, he was the Atlantic 10 Coach of the Year twice, and Scouting News and the NABC named him National Coach of the Year in 2013. So, what was Coach Knight really like? If I had a dime for every time I've been asked that question. But here we are with the best person to answer it. He is Jim Crews, and you get to meet him when we come back.
The Hoosier Basketball Trivia Question, sponsored by Christy, Farrell, Lee, and Bell. Serious injury isn't what we do, it's all we do. Today's question: in 1928, newly constructed Butler Fieldhouse, now Hinkle, hosted the state championship, which was won by Muncie Central. What player who would be a future Hall of Fame coach lost that game? The answer after the break. Now our trivia question answered, sponsored by Christy, Farrell, Lee, and Bell. Serious injury isn't what we do, it's all we do. Today's question: in 1928, newly constructed Butler Fieldhouse, now Hinkle, hosted the state championship, which was won by Muncie Central. What player who would be a future Hall of Fame coach lost that game? The answer: John Wooden.
Welcome back to the Hoosier Basketball Experience. We're here today with my old coach, Jim Crews.
Phil, good to see you.
Cruzy, thanks for being here.
Enjoying it.
Hey, before we dive into your incredible basketball career, both as a player and as a coach, let's just talk about your family. Talk about your kids, your grandkids, where they are now, where you are now.
Okay, well, we live in the northern part of Indianapolis, my wife and I, Kim, and we have 2 kids, and who grew up in Evansville, Indiana, but they both have lived in Brooklyn, New York, and New Jersey.
Okay.
So our children live out there, our grandchildren live out there. And you just became a new grandparent, so it's an awesome experience.
It's fun. You get to send them home.
Well, you know what's interesting is my dad, before he passed away, he asked me, well, how do you like being a grandfather? And I said, I feel like I'm the director of fun and safety.
There you go.
And
That's
he kind of
exactly
chuckles.
right.
Yeah, he
That's
kind of
exactly
chuckles
right.
like you did, and he pauses and he goes, compared to being the warden
yeah, as he was with you.
The warden of responsibility and accountability, which is the parents.
Yes.
So in other words, your resume just improved.
Good.
It's a lot better, that resume.
Well,
it's great.
If you listen to my daughter-in-law, our 1-year-old should have a helmet on at all times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a big advantage with my kids because our daughter is a marriage and family therapist, so she's a therapist. And I had an advantage over every coach in America. And our son's a pastor. So I'd come home from practice or a game, and my wife, Kim,
you get psychological training and prayed
She
for.
looks at me, which one do you want? Do you need therapy or a purse? I said, put them both on speed dial. I need it both.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, before, again, we go into both your playing and coaching career, at the end of the day, you came back to Indianapolis. We interviewed earlier. I told you Tom Abernathy. I know how close you guys are. Talk a little bit about working with Aber at his facility.
Yeah, the IBA. I got out of coaching, probably 5 years ago, something like that, 5 or 6 years ago. And I had done it before. I was in a little break, and I'd been over to Ab's place. And the IBA is such an encouraging and safe place. So, Ab's got a lot of young coaches, in their 20s,
sure,
that are just
really good with kids.
Yeah, they are. They're great. So they're fun to be with, and then the kids are fun to be with. So I did. When the virus hit, it kind of knocked me out of it for a while, and I haven't gone back yet. I can, but I like not doing it. I love doing it.
Yeah.
But my wheelhouse, as I was telling you back there, my wheelhouse was the first and second graders.
Yeah.
And
They're fun.
They are so fun. And so one day, we're having a little practice, and we had a nice little group that I had for a few months. So we knew each other pretty well.
Sure.
And I said, okay, guys, 2-on-1 fast break. I said, get 2 lines up at the top of the key. And I said, I'm on defense. And one of the youngsters goes, we want a kid to be on defense. And I go, I'm a kid. Another youngster goes, he ain't a kid, he's an adult. Third youngster goes, he's a lot older than an adult. So the reason
Did you put a kid on defense finally?
So the reason I like those guys, because they just call it how they
They're
see it.
so honest.
If they're 5th and 6th graders, they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly right.
So anyway,
Exactly
so it was
right.
a lot of fun.
So, grew up in Illinois, played basketball in Illinois, high school basketball at University.
University High School.
But even before then, talk about your earliest basketball memories, maybe your basketball heroes, guys that you followed on TV or radio.
Well, shoot, back then TV was not big
Yeah.
in terms of college games or anything else. Normal, Illinois is about 50 miles north of Champaign, University of Illinois. But my dad was a college coach. My dad was at Illinois State, and back then, before 1970, it was a NAIA Division II mixture. It was a hybrid some way.
Okay.
I never did figure that out. But anyway, it's funny when this virus hit, you start cleaning out things, and we found a picture, and this is vivid. You said first memories, is I'm sitting on the bench with my dad. My dad's the assistant.
Okay.
So my dad's the assistant, and the head coach is there, Coach Colley at the time. And I'm sitting next to Coach Colley, and my dad's not. And I'm probably about 6 or 7 years old. So that was a great experience because he was basketball, baseball, and football assistant coaches. So you're always around sports, all around the universities. So that was a great experience. And then in 1970, Illinois State went Division I, and they hired the first African-American basketball coach, Division I basketball coach.
Sure.
His name was Will Robinson. And what's cool about that, there's a lot of cool things about that, though. He was 58 years old. Well, how many coaches get a college job at 58 years old?
Yeah.
Number 2,
You did.
He came, well, I'm talking about from high school.
Yeah.
He had never been a college coach.
Okay.
He had never been a college coach.
Okay.
So we went from high school to college, and then being at that age, and then obviously being African American. So that was a great experience.
So you talked about your kids. It was the same with me when I grew up in Muncie. My best friends were coaches at Ball State, and so we got to go to the gym on Saturday and Sundays and just hang out in the gym. So after the practice of law got started for me, I became a volunteer assistant coach primarily so my kids could grow up in the gym. Right? There's not a better place for kids to grow up than around the gym.
That's exactly right. It was a lot of fun, and I think a lot of leadership skills are developed there in the neighborhood. Nothing was organized per se. I mean, I didn't play organized basketball until 7th grade. I didn't play organized football until freshman year in high school. And then baseball was a little bit younger, 8 or 9 years old. So it was just a different era, but it was a great one for us. We've been very blessed with that.
So you're in Illinois, and we're here to talk about the Hoosier basketball experience. Talk about your first memories of hearing about Indiana basketball, it being any different than basketball in other places.
Well, it was interesting. First of all, on our block growing up, a young man named Mike Wells was 3 years older than us, and he was the All-American kid, great guy, and a tremendous athlete. He went and played football at Illinois.
Okay.
Starting quarterback. He ended up playing for the Vikings for a couple of years, but could have gone baseball or the pros. Anyway, good basketball, all this stuff. And he played. I mean, he played. And he never told me anything, but it just didn't go well. It didn't go well. And so I was never that acclimated to the University of Illinois. And then, unfortunately, Monday, this gentleman, he just passed away, is like my second father. His name was Art Swartz, who went to Indiana.
Okay.
And his oldest daughter, or only daughter, but oldest child, was at and she was 3 years older than I was. And he just happened to go, hey, you want to go pick up Kim in Bloomington, Indiana? And so we drove over. Assembly Hall was being under construction.
Oh, that'd be 1970.
Right there, exactly. And so that was the first time, and that was before getting recruited or anything like that.
Okay.
And then, got recruited by, Coach Bliss came over, which was another thing going back to Coach Robinson, Illinois State. My dad's on the staff. So here's some schools that want to come in and maybe recruit you. And my dad's at an Illinois State basketball office.
Right.
And my dad went
Trying
to
to
Coach
pull you
Robinson. Yeah, like awkward situation. Coach Robinson, my dad just said, hey, I'll take these things somewhere else or do what. He goes, no, anything goes, do it right in that office. That's no problem whatsoever. And then, Coach Knight wasn't Coach Knight back when when I was getting recruited.
Yeah.
And so
young guy, just took the job.
Yeah, just took the job, but he presented things in ways that separated himself from the other coaches.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk with Jim Crews not only about that recruiting process and a coach named Coach K, as well as Coach Knight. And we'll talk to Jim about those things when we come back after these messages. Welcome back to the Hoosier Basketball Experience with Coach Jim Crews. Crewsy, talk a little bit about your high school career. In Illinois, they called it a super sectional. Tell our viewers what that means.
Well, in Illinois, you have the regional, then the sectional, and then the super sectional, which is just one game, and then you go to state.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we got beat in the super sectional both our junior year and senior year. And it was kind of unique. Our senior year was the first year they split, and we were a smaller school.
Okay.
So we were with all the big schools. The first year we had a really good team. Most of the guys that were good players were seniors. I was a junior, and then we were good the next year, but not as good. But we got beat in both those games. And interesting, all the games that have been played and coached and so forth, if I had to name 5 bad losses,
yep.
2 of them are from high. Those are the top 2.
Yeah.
They're the top 2.
We hear that a lot, especially at the Hoosier Basketball Experience, Indiana basketball being so important. Somebody will have an NBA career, and the loss that hurt the most is in the tournament in high school.
Oh, it's
right?
it's unbelievable. So it was a great high school experience from that standpoint, athletically, but we got.
So the super sectional would be the equivalent of the semi-state here.
Yeah. In fact, we got beat by Danville, Illinois, and Coach Held ended up going to Anderson after a couple years after that. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the recruiting process. Coach Bliss was an assistant at IU, made contact with you, whatever the rules were back then, much different than today. But you got letters from Coach K, who had been a player for Coach Knight. Talk about that a little bit.
Right. Mike ended up being a grad assistant, I think, our sophomore or junior year. I think it was our junior year, I believe, maybe sophomore year. But got a letter from Mike when he was in the military after he graduated from West Point, and another guy named Jimmy Oxley, who ended up having a great relationship with also. But just telling him about the experience of playing for Coach Knight, because again, as I said earlier, he was not a household name, and the media was different back then in terms of exposure and so forth. And games not being on TV. We'd watch Illinois game, and the only time we'd see Indiana play was if they're playing Illinois.
Sure.
I mean, we didn't. It wasn't the
on
Big
the
Ten network.
Local television station.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was a different ball
with
game.
antennas and fuzzy, and
exactly
had to come in.
100%. And so it was good. So I look back, and the time is temporary. The time with Coach Knight, or time with your teammates, time with your assistant coaches, or
your
a lot of things. Right. No, that's exactly right. They're temporary.
Yeah.
But the lessons and the memories and the relationships are permanent. And that's what's made cool. That's what's cool about Indiana, in my opinion. I mean, really cool.
Yeah. So you get to Bloomington. Season is 72. It's the first year that freshmen are eligible. Did that register with you at all in high school that they were going to change the rule, or that it was about to be changed? You might get to play as a freshman. Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, but it's different now. Like freshmen don't play now; they get upset.
Or transfer.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. But it's, to tell you the truth, I mean, it was just the next process. Okay, I had an opportunity to go to college. Let's go. I wanted to go to Indiana, out of the schools that recruit me, so that's what I did. But, I had a draft number. If they said, okay, you're going to go to the military, you just kind of did it.
Yeah.
Which On one hand's good and one hand's probably not good because you're just
following the next step.
You're just following.
So that freshman year, talk a little bit about your classmates, your teammates that came in with you in that strong class.
Yeah, that was great from this standpoint. Our class is recognized with the 76.
Sure.
Okay, because of the national championship and then get beat that year and so forth. But it takes a lot of classes to get that done. And it started with that first class when we were freshmen, is the senior class.
Yeah.
Steve Downing, unbelievable. I mean, just an unbelievable leader, great guy. He and Bill Russell have the two best laughs in the world.
Yeah.
Unbelievable
Yeah.
laugh. John Ritter I was just saying, people used to make fun of me, but maybe not anymore, but I used to say, he was the best layup shooter I've ever seen. Well, now,
it was style.
But
it was style. It was
you see these guys now, all these NBAs,
Yeah,
Kyrie Irving, and they do that. Well, John Ritter was doing a lot of that
picture
stuff
perfect.
back then,
Yeah.
and reverse spins and all this stuff. And he was really good. But Jerry Memmering, who was a senior, didn't play a lot, but played important, but welcoming.
Yeah.
Frank Wilson, who started the year before, and then Quinn and I kind of started the next year.
Sure.
And had a great attitude about it.
Yeah.
And then at the same time is the class.
How about my favorite IU name?
Bootsy?
Bootsy White.
Bootsy, he'd always call Coach Chief. Okay, Chief. Coach say something. Okay, Chief.
Okay, Chief.
And Coach was all right
We
with
went
it.
with it.
He went
All
with it. But then the class ahead of us, Greeno, Laz, Doug Allen, J.K., John Campstra, Steve Allfeld.
Boy.
That was, really their class and our class was one class.
Sure.
Academically we're two classes.
But you
and got
came in
split up.
together with
And
eligibility.
a lot of it is, I get a, kind of a, sorry heart sometimes because 76, okay, everyone knows 76 or whatever, and the 75 team, those guys,
laid the bricks down.
They laid the bricks, and they were great.
Yeah.
They were great in every regard.
Sure.
Every regard.
Yeah.
And on the floor. And, everyone says what team's better and all that stuff. But my point is, they get left in the shadow sometimes.
Yes.
And it's life, but it's unfortunate. But it's really those three classes that set the stage. I mean, those guys they taught us what kind of Coach Knight was about a little bit on that.
So let me talk to you about, I didn't prep you for this, but as I look at you statistically, right, you have a really good freshman year. When you talk about the players you just mentioned, and you get to play on that team a lot. And the next 2 years, not as much, right? Talk about that transition and how tough that was.
Well, really, Quinn and I started as freshmen as guards for the team, and we won the Big Ten and we went to the Final Four. And then the next year, we play at Michigan, and we get beat by 18 points. Or not beating. We blow an 18-point lead, which is worse.
Right. Well, that's worse. That's worse.
Might be worse. So anyway, I always said my career was kind of a reverse opposite than most. It's kind of oxymoron. I played more than didn't play. Then my senior year I played, but
you sure did.
But this is the sophomore and junior year. The junior year, as I told you, is like a country club because we're just beating everyone so bad. But there's things that happen that were good. First of all, it probably prepared me for coaching more than anything, because when you go to college, most of the time you're in the top one or two best players in 7th grade, 8th grade, high school, and all that stuff. Well, you don't know what those guys on the bench feel like.
Yes.
So it kind of taught me that, which is a good coaching thing. And then I got my best compliment ever that year.
Which was?
It was my junior year. I told you the Michigan game before.
Yeah.
So things did not go well and so forth. And so the following year at Michigan, we win this afternoon game, and I'm on the bus very quickly. There's maybe 4 of us just on the bus waiting for everyone else to get on the bus. And the bus driver goes, hey, whatever, he's not talking to me, he's just kind of talking out loud, asking the guys. He goes, whatever happened to that Cruz guy?
He remembered you as a freshman, boy.
Yeah.
Where is he now?
Because of the bus. Because he thought I was gone. So that was great. And then this is what kind of teammates you have. We're playing over in Illinois, close to my hometown.
Sure. Lots of fans.
You know, I won the human victory
Families there.
cigar, like, you know what that is.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but I get in, we're 25 up or whatever. Scott May's not, but I make a good pass to Scott. Games, we're 30 points ahead or whatever, 25 points, as I said. Scott sprints to the top of the key and gives me a hug. But, you know, it wasn't an important pass. It wasn't it wasn't anything, but he's making you feel good.
And that's
why it's neat.
And that's the Hoosier basketball experience. And you're going to hear more about it with Jim Cruz when we come back with these messages. Welcome back to the Hoosier basketball experience. Today with Jim Cruz. Cruzy, you mentioned earlier those tough years being your sophomore and junior years, but those actually taught you things. And I think you said three specific things. You mentioned two.
Well, the
What's
compassion from Scott, and then the compliment from the Michigan bus driver, and everything else. But the third one was I got to practice early one day, so I was just kind of shooting around, and the ball went over toward those chairs that were those plastic chairs, bench that are bench
that weren't chained together
and everything. And so no one was out there except for Chuck Swinson or Tim Walker, our managers and everything. So I started taking hook shots, and they were rebounded from the bench. Yeah. And here comes Coach in. And he looks at me and goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Working on my game shots." And he just goes,
there you go.
He got it.
There you go.
He got it. Because he's always talking about shoot the shots where you're going to be in the game.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're an 18-footer, take 18 footers.
Yeah.
So but if you lose your sense of humor, you're dead in the world. So
those are the kind of stories you get on the Hoosier basketball experience. And fortunately, we get Jim back next week. So join us for the Hoosier basketball experience next Friday at 9:30. Good night.